Let's talk about injection sites. Intramuscular injections can be given to the muscles of the hind limb, but be cautious. I mean, if there's anything you can give subcutaneously instead of intramuscularly, then I would suggest giving it subcutaneously. They do have big muscles as they jump around, but we're talking about a small animal, so even small amounts are relatively big and can be painful. So if you have to, then use the hind limb, use the muscles here, but I do prefer giving subcutaneous injections when possible. You give subcutaneous injections the same way as you give them to basically any other species. Luckily, rabbits have a lot of excess skin on their backs, and if you give injections to the front half, they might not even notice it. It's relatively unpainful usually. So how do you give subcutaneous injections? Use your first and third finger, pinch up the skin. Use your second one to make a little tent, and you can poke in there. Let's see how this works. First and third. Pinch it up. Make a little tent, and then you can poke in there. I'll try to show it yet again. Pinch it up, make a little tent, and then here you can actually inject the animal. And this way, this is why I like this method the most, because if you just pinch it up like this, it's much easier to poke through the skin, and then you're going to have the drug coming out on the other side of the skin if you poke through. But if you make a little tent, then it's much easier to keep the needle actually where it is supposed to be and give the subcutaneous injection the way you're supposed to. So I'm just going to inject meloxicam, which is a non-steroid anti-inflammatory drug, for this rabbit subcutaneously. I've previously explained how I like giving subcutaneous injections using my first and third finger, because then I can pinch the skin up. Stay here. Okay. So pinch the skin up, and with this, use the use of my second finger and make a little tent where I can poke the injection. Once again, it's all right. First and third, using the second, make a little tent. There I can just poke in, inject, and that's it. If you want a venous route in a rabbit, or if you want to draw blood, there's basically 3 places where it's easier to poke a rabbit. The first place is the saphenous vein, running on the leg, just as in dogs and cats. I'm going to tell you why I do and don't like these specific places and where I draw blood from and where I place a vein catheter, and I will see a video of me placing a vein catheter at the end of this video. So I don't really like drawing blood from here because it's quite easy to get a hematoma. Plus the rabbits don't always like to have their hind legs poked. They do like it more than the front leg, but I still don't prefer it if I don't have to. The cephalic vein runs on their little legs. The reason I do not like using this either that much is when rabbits are not anesthetized, they tend to sit having their little legs pulled back. So if you want to place a vein catheter or just poke the leg for a blood draw, you need to pull out the leg, and the rabbit is going to be pulling it back because they don't like their legs being pulled out. And the other thing is, rabbits don't tend to bite, but they can. And if you mess around with their leg too much, you might get bitten a bit. So watch that if you're using that leg. Plus, they have quite small front legs, so it's not that easy to poke. So the place where I prefer to draw blood and place a vein catheter is the rabbit ear. Rabbit ears are fascinating. Rabbits originate from Europe, but they have been introduced to Australia. And actually, rabbits in Australia have developed larger ears, the study shows, because it's hotter there and they lose heat from their ears because it's full of arteries and veins. So it's quite fascinating. And it's a very nice place to place a vein catheter in or draw blood. We don't do these in the same place. I like to draw blood from the central auricular artery, which I'll show you in a live rabbit as well, but I'll just explain it here. First, there's a big artery running in the middle of the ear. It's quite easy to see if you just shave a little bit of the fur off. And it's a very easy place to draw blood from usually. But do not place a vein catheter into it, because if it gets blocked, it can cause the necrosis of the end of the ear, because that's where, you know, the arterial blood goes through. Where you can place a vein catheter is the lateral marginal ear vein. When I started working with rabbits, especially lop-eared rabbits, you know, where the ear is like hanging all over the place, I always just lifted the ears to see which side is actually the lateral side. So you can do that if you're a bit mixed up. But once you know which one's the lateral side, you just need someone to, you know, there's a vein just running right at the very, very edge of the ear. You need someone to just hold the vein for you, shave it a bit, disinfect it, of course, and it's quite easy to place a vein catheter into there. It's a very small vein. It looks scary at first to think that it's hard to place that vein catheter in there, but it is not that hard. There are not so many valves in there, so usually the catheter does not get caught. So once you're in the vein, you can just slide it up. Okay, so this is the ear of a rabbit that is alive and well, and with the light source behind the ear, you can see all the little vessels going around in the ear, and you can see the big artery in the middle, and can kind of see the two veins at the side. But you can definitely see that the ear is full of arteries and veins in a rabbit. Okay, here's another rabbit ear. This is a white rabbit, so it's a bit more see-through, but it does have a smaller ear. So you can see the artery running in the middle, and then the veins running on the two sides. Okay, I'll stop moving it, and then you can see it better. And if you turn the ear, you can see which one is the lateral side. And the outside part is the lateral side, and there you can see the lateral ear vein as well. And in the middle, you can see the artery. Okay, this is a vein catheter. I'm just going to look at the parts. So there's a plastic sheet on it, so you don't poke yourself in the finger with it. It can still happen occasionally, but we try not to do that. There is the plastic part that will be in the vein after you insert it, and there is a needle which will help you poke through the skin and get to the vein. I'm just going to put this back before I poke myself in the finger with it. There are, going upwards, two wings which can move, which help when you try to stabilize the catheter after placing it into the animal. There is a cap on top of it which you can open, and through that you can insert smaller amounts of drugs intravenously when the catheter is in place. Okay, going upwards, there's a little wing here as well that can help you pull out the needle when necessary. There is a chamber going upwards, this one, which stops the blood from gushing out once you're in the vein. As you can imagine, this is not very useful for us in exotic pet medicine with the smaller animals because we don't have that much of blood rushing out. And then, of course, there is the cap that will close this whole thing. When inserting a vein catheter, I mean, everyone has their own techniques. I like to hold the two wings and the end of the catheter and insert it that way. Some people like to hold one wing and the cap and then this other little wing and insert it that way. I mean, basically, you just have to try it out, and whichever works for you is going to be the best. What you really need to watch is don't hold it in a way that the whole thing is unstable. It has to be stable no matter how you hold it. And of course you clip the fur off of the place where you want to insert the vein catheter, you disinfect it, and then you can insert it into the vein. What I like doing before inserting the catheter is just pulling it back a bit and then replacing it, because sometimes when you open an original catheter like you always do, it just sticks a little bit, and once you're in the vein and you're trying to pull the needle back and it's sticking, you can just yank it out of the vein itself, and it doesn't really make you happy once you're in the vein that you yank it out. Okay, once the catheter is placed, you can stop blood from flowing out before you put the cap on just by pressing on the vein under the end of the catheter. Of course, you need to secure your catheter in place. The two little wings help to do this. If you can tape it, but if the tape is too big, you can just, like I did, just tear it in half and then secure it like that. You can also tear a little bit in there and then just secure it this way. In a rabbit, it can be tricky as you're using the lateral ear vein. So what I tend to do is just take a gauze, roll it up, place it into the rabbit's ear, and then the rabbit's ear can go, it's basically around this, and that way the rabbit ear is not flat, it's roundish, and you can just tape it around this way.